you tired of watching your country burn and want to do something to stop it? Well, then you've come to the right place. We're talking all things politics from a patriotic, no-nonsense point of view. I'm We the People, and I'm your host, Skylar, the Patriot.
Hey America, we're back for another episode of We the People, and today I want to have a discussion with you about something that is very, very important. We're talking about abortion. People on both sides of this argument, both the pro-life community and the pro-choice community, are very, very passionate. There are a lot of emotions regarding this topic from both sides, and because of that, this is an important conversation that we need to have. The question is, can we reach a compromise? Can one side get what they want, which is to not have a child, to not be a mother, to not be parents? And can the other side get what they want as well, which is no more killing of unborn children? Now, this answer might surprise you, and it's going to take some understanding, some more understanding of details, and really a heart-to-heart conversation, as well as more understanding about how abortion is even funded, something that really just needs to be asked now. It's an important conversation, and we're going to have it on today's show. So let's get after it.
For too long, a small group of people have controlled our country, and they have trampled our values. They have lied to us. They have abused us. And they have silenced us. But in the process, they have awakened something that is very dangerous to them. It's we the people, and it is time for we the people to rise.
I want to have this conversation with you for one main reason. It's for the 63 million unborn babies that have been murdered by abortion since the ruling of Roe v. Wade in 1973. To say this in as good of a way as possible, in as best a way as possible, because there's really no way you can describe it, that number, just even one is too much, but 63 million. This is sad, heartbreaking, horrifying. I can't believe what we have done to our own human race, to fellow human beings. And let's establish that as a scientific fact. Life begins at conception. These are not clumps of cells. These are human beings. But I want to have a conversation about how I think that we can hopefully end all of this, or at least reduce the numbers of abortions significantly, which would in and of itself be a blessing. We pray that we can end it entirely, but just to reduce the numbers in a significant way would be fantastic. So I want to discuss the court leak, the opinion of the court on this topic from Justice Alito. That was leaked. You're probably seeing that all throughout the media right now. I'm going to say this much. I'm happy about the potential decision of the court. I believe they would actually rule on this in June. Whether or not that's sped up by Justice Roberts, I don't know, but that's potentially what it was going to be. I'm happy to hear about that they would overturn Roe v. Wade. I'm not happy about the fact at all that it's been leaked. The leak is very, very dangerous for our country because now it is going to be weaponized against us, against conservatives, and against the conservative justices on the Supreme Court. The Dems are going to demand, Biden himself probably, will demand that Justice Alito resigns. My prediction, that might be going a little far, but my prediction, because they're going to say that it was somehow on him for letting this happen, for allowing this to happen. He was irresponsible, potentially. That's one option. But what I do know for a fact that they're going to do, because they've already tried to do this and they already have been doing this, is the Democrats are going to push now more than ever for all-out radical abortion legislation. It's going to be awful. Can't allow it to pass. And now what they're going to try to do as well is end the filibuster in the Senate and pack the Supreme Court. They've been calling for this. Joe Biden, if you want to call it campaign, slightly campaigned on this, the idea of packing the court, and then said, no, I wouldn't pack the court. But then there's videos of him saying, no, we should pack the court, right? But I'm going to say it this way, and it's not to make a rhyme. Once you pack, you don't go back. Once you pack the Supreme Court, you do not recover from that. Why? Because it is the last defense against radical policy, against a radicalized, tyrannical executive and legislative branch of government. The judicial branch of government is the last defense of that. In particular, the Supreme Court. If it is removed, this fundamental understanding of the number of justices that we have on the court, if that is changed and increased, our country's dead. Gone. 100%. We will no longer be a republic. We will successfully then at that point be a dictatorship where we can have radical swings from left and to right policy. Look at Venezuela. It's not going well for them. I believe now they have upwards of 15 justices. I believe that is the case now. So, on a fast track, they already are on it, basically that status, to complete tyranny. And we in this country have pondered the idea once already. In 1937, when President Franklin Roosevelt had proposed adding a new justice to the Supreme Court for every justice who refused to retire at 70 years old. Wanted to do this up to a maximum of 15 justices. This is something that the Senate Judiciary Committee had said that, quote, a measure which should be so emphatically rejected that its parallel will never again be presented to the free representatives of the free people of America. They understood how ridiculous that is. The problem is now we have a large majority of politicians on one side of the aisle, the left, Democrats, who think this would be a good idea. They want to say, and they are saying, remove the filibuster. It stands in the way. But loved the filibuster when it came to segregation and to slavery. But now all of a sudden they want to do it. Can you understand, can you see how this is only done for the purpose, these policies, ending the filibuster, packing the Supreme Court, are done for partisan political purposes because it is radical. Our country was not made to operate this way. That is why our Constitution is the way that it is. That's why we have checks and balances, this system, because it's not supposed to be a fast process like FDR wanted, that Joe Biden wants, that Democrats today want, the radical left. No. This is supposed to be a slow, lethargic process for a reason. This idea cannot be a thing. But Biden and the Democrats will push for this response to the Justice Alito leak. Mark my words on that. But on the topic of the federal government, I want to talk to you more now about how abortion is funded. Probably something that not many necessarily know about, because they don't really tell you about it. But I want to talk about it today. The average cost of an abortion can range from $350 to over $2,000. A pretty big difference there, a pretty big range. I'm going to break down now the price breakdown here. Medication abortion, also known as abortion pill, with insurance within 10 weeks of gestation will cost anywhere between $350 to $650. Now, the same thing, the abortion pill without insurance, can range up to $1,000. And then we have the cost of surgical abortion. Suction aspiration / vacuum abortion, where they vacuum out a baby from the womb. Unbelievable. 6 to 12 weeks gestation. That price is $600 to $1,000. I'll try to get through. This is very hard to talk about. Dilation and curettage, 13 to 16 weeks gestation, $850 to $1,600. Dilation and evacuation, 17 to 21 weeks gestation, $1,500 to $2,100. A lot of money, a lot of price ranges. And the question is, how is this funded? And this is a question that I don't think is often asked nearly enough, nor is it even really understood. But I want to talk about it with you. After the court's ruling on Roe v. Wade, Congress enacted the Hyde Amendment, and it was passed on September 30th, 1976 by the House of Representatives with a vote of 312 to 93. Now think about that for a minute. That's 312 to 93 on a vote that would restrict abortions. Do you think we'd even see a vote that's that far apart, that lopsided today? I don't think we would. That's a shame. This is a vote to override the veto of a funding bill for the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, HEW, and it was named for its chief sponsor, Republican Congressman Henry Hyde of Illinois. Another interesting thing, this is a representative from Illinois, where Illinois now is so far gone, to put it lightly. The Hyde Amendment blocks federal funds from being used to pay for abortion outside of the exceptions of rape, incest, or if the pregnancy is determined to endanger the woman's life. Now, initially, the Hyde Amendment only affected funding for abortions under Medicaid. And because Congress reauthorizes the Hyde Amendment annually as an attachment to the appropriations bill for the HHS, it also restricts abortion funding under the Indian Health Service, Medicare, and the Children's Health Insurance Program. And over the years, language similar to that in the Hyde Amendment has been incorporated into a range of other federal programs that provide or pay for what the left calls health services. Certainly not for the unborn child. But this is for women, and it includes the military's TRICARE program, federal prisons, and the Federal Employees Health Benefits Program. The Affordable Care Act, ACA, also known as Obamacare, also included a provision that applied similar abortion coverage limitations to plans that are sold through the marketplace for women who receive federal income-based subsidies to purchase private health insurance. Now, because Medicaid is jointly funded by the federal and state governments, there's a loophole there. States can choose to pay for abortions under Medicaid in other instances, but must use their own revenues and not federal funds to cover abortions. Now, currently, 16 states have a policy directing that the use of their own funds to pay for abortions for women insured by Medicaid beyond the Hyde Amendment's limitations. That means that if you live in either Alaska, Hawaii, Washington State, Oregon, California, Montana, Minnesota, New Mexico, Illinois, New York, Maryland, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Vermont, or Maine, then your state taxes, your taxpayer dollars, are directly funding abortions, whether you like it or not. And I think it's probably ridiculous to assume that every person in every one of these states supports abortions. I don't think for a second that that's the case. So I don't think they should be having to pay for it. In many cases, for women in states that do follow the Hyde Amendment restrictions and do publicly fund abortions, the women will usually have to pay for an abortion out of pocket. Now, that's the case for 56% of women. Now, the other 44% of reproductive-aged women live in states that do allow public-funded abortion. And according to the CDC, for 2019, here's some facts. They're troubling, but you need to know them. A total, 2019, according to the CDC, a total of 629,000, around to 630,000 abortions were reported for 47 states, with Washington, D.C. having a rate of 11.4 abortions per every 1,000 women aged 15 to 44 years old. That is 630,000 unborn children in 1 year. 1 year. Now, 2 of these states were allowing a state-funded abortion. This is California, Maryland, and New Hampshire. Even though their CDC, the CDC does not show their data is actually incomplete. They don't cover California, Maryland, and New Hampshire. And 2 of those states are ones that do allow state-funded abortion. In the 30 areas where racial and ethnic data was reported, black women accounted for 38% of abortions, while white women accounted for 33% of abortions, and Hispanic women accounted for 21%. So tell me again how the left can claim to be the champions of the black community, how they can care about the black community and have their best interest in mind when they are aborting so many of their children. Kind of like how Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, had said that this was a eugenics program since the beginning to remove the black race from society, which she called a plague in our society. But she just didn't want anybody to know about it. Interesting fact, this is who Hillary Clinton says that she admires, Margaret Sanger, and the life that she led. But nonetheless, people are still receiving abortions and arguing for pro-choice policies, claiming that it is their body, their choice, even though it is not just their body, therefore it cannot be just their choice. But what if we could reach a compromise where they got what they wanted, which is to not be a parent, to no longer be pregnant, and to live carefree without having to be accountable for their own actions? But also, we got what we wanted, for there to be far fewer abortions, if any at all. A chance for our taxpayer dollars to go to something that makes a lot more sense than just killing unborn children, which makes no sense at all. A chance for us to, I believe, to really do some good. There are some things about this that not everybody will agree with right away, or perhaps even at all. But I hope that you're going to hear me out, because I think this is far better than the alternative. And I'm saying this with all of my heart, all of my soul, all of my being, all of my love for God and those most innocent in our society, the unborn. And I'm asking that you'll just give me just a few minutes of your time to explain this to you. Imagine for a moment that there are 10 babies in front of you. And you know that with the way that things are right now, let's say 9 of them would have been aborted because the mother did not feel ready to be a mother. And only 1 will live because either that child's mother put aside her own needs to take on the responsibility of being a parent and the blessing in which that is, or simply because she did feel ready at that time to be a mother. But either way, that's the situation. 10 babies in front of you. Only 1 lives. Now imagine another scenario. There was again 10 babies. They're in front of you, but now things have changed in our society in regard to legislation and public policy. Now all 10 babies have been born, and they are happily living with their mothers. 9 of the babies did not need to die like the other scenario, because both sides could find a way to reach a compromise where both sides got what they wanted. The women that did not feel ready to be mothers in this situation did not have to end up aborting, killing their children. Instead, their taxpayer dollars went to fund contraceptives, which didn't allow for her to become pregnant in the first place. Because of that, human life, which does, without question, scientific fact, begins at conception. It was not destroyed. No babies were murdered. The 10 women that ended up becoming pregnant did indeed end up giving birth to their children, and they did become mothers. Now, as a Christian, I do understand that the miracle of life is sacred, and that will never, ever change for me. But I also know that God gave us free will, and that free will and individual liberty are protected in our Constitution. Therefore, no matter how much I, as a Christian, may not want to fund contraceptives because that stops the miracle of life beginning, I have the understanding that no matter how passionate I am about defending human life and ending abortion, I will not be able to, nor have the constitutional authority to dictate to others what they will and will not do, no matter how badly I want to. I cannot stop a person from having sex before they're married or ready to become a parent. I can't do that. And I also know that I cannot stop that same person from having an abortion because they became pregnant before they felt ready to be one, to be a mother. These are things that I cannot do. The same way that the liberal cannot tell me that I have to support them having an abortion. They can't do that. Now, I won't pretend for a second that I don't recognize that by using these contraceptives, that they are stopping the wonderful miracle of life, conception, from happening. No, I recognize that. I recognize that that's a fact. And I recognize the problems that that presents for me as a Christian. And I know how the church feels about this. And I don't know how many of you may feel this same way as well. Just like me, I can imagine it's a lot of you. Might make the argument and say, no, I don't want to have to pay for contraceptives. But what I do realize, what I do recognize, is that I cannot force people to not have abortions. I can't do that. No matter how badly I want to, and I pray every night for that to stop. It pains me and breaks my heart, as I know it does for all of you. Therefore, I am recommending that we reach an agreement with the other side. And the agreement being that they, if they do not feel ready, do not have to be parents. And therefore, they'll be given the option of having free contraceptives. And we will be able to rejoice knowing that by doing this, we will have likely significantly reduced the number of abortions that are received. I believe it would probably cut it in half at least. And I think it's fair to assume that the majority of the pro-choice community feels the way that they do because they do not want to be parents or be accountable for their actions. But they want to be able to live freely and do whatever they want without any consequences. But I think if we were to offer them something like free contraceptives, they'd take that because they'd feel they didn't have to be accountable then anymore. Maybe avoid the embarrassment of going to the store and buying condoms, for example, buying the morning after pill. Maybe they're afraid to do that. And maybe that's why some, because they refuse to practice abstinence and end up becoming pregnant, maybe that's why some of them then turn to abortion. I've known Christians who have even felt this way. But I think it's fair to assume that if we did something like this, we could cut these abortions down significantly, in my opinion, 50% or more. Because I think the majority of people feel this way. I think there are a select few, though, who, just for some reason, and I think there are plenty of videos online and plenty of examples to support this, that there are some people out there who actually brag about having abortions. I won't act like for a second that that's not a thing. And those people are evil, but I think they represent a small portion, small fraction of the pro-choice community. And because of this, I have recognized that unless we completely outlaw abortions at the state level, this is assuming that Roe v. Wade does in fact get overturned, sending this decision back to the states, which is where it should have been the entire time, then these people will continue to have abortions, whether their state follows the Hyde Amendment restrictions or not. Again, whether that be because they're embarrassed to purchase contraceptives on their own or simply just don't want to be accountable. Therefore, I'm still left with the moral pain of knowing that innocent babies are going to be killed. But I am willing, in order to save what would add up to millions of lives, to have some of my taxpayer dollars, some of my taxes, go to funding contraceptives. Now, if you are someone who lives in a state that publicly funds abortion, some of your money is already going to stop these people from becoming parents. Just the way that it is right now, a human life is ended in the process, the way that it is at this current time. But if things were to change, however, and some of our taxes were to go to fund contraceptives, then a human life would not be destroyed because it did not begin, which is at conception. And it's also worth noting that both morally and financially, it costs significantly less to fund something like a condom, for example, than it does an abortion. For the sake of example, a 10-pack of condoms cost $9, and the morning after pill costs roughly $50, as opposed to an abortion that can cost anywhere, as we discussed earlier, between $350 all the way to over $2,000. From just the financial standpoint alone, if I lived in a state that publicly funded abortion, I'd much rather pay the $9 or $50 than the $350 to $2,000 that end human life. That goes without even mentioning the moral gratification that I would have and the joy that I would feel knowing that we would have successfully, significantly reduced the number of abortions. And to those that may be skeptical of this idea, I will ask you this one question. What would you rather have? Knowing that we seemingly cannot outlaw all abortions, even if Roe v. Wade is overruled and sent back to the states, there will be these so-called sanctuary states, certainly not a sanctuary for unborn children, for those who seek to receive an abortion, as well as companies that are willing to pay for their employees to travel out of state and receive an abortion in one of these so-called sanctuary states. Some of these companies, for example, you should know them, so you know how to spend your money accordingly, are Amazon, Levi Strauss, as well as Tesla Motors. So again, I'll ask, would you rather continue to see nearly 620,000 unborn children be aborted every single year, assuming we stay on the same course that we're on and don't change a thing? Or would you rather see a country where those numbers are significantly reduced, perhaps by 50% or more, because our taxpayer dollars went to fund something morally and financially better for us? If you knew someone was coming to harm, to destroy, to kill one of those 10 babies, what would you do? Would you let evil come and take away their precious and innocent life, while you, even against your own will, are funding it with your taxes? Or instead, would you exhaust all efforts and scoop those innocent children up in your arms and run far, far away with them until they were safe? I know what I would do. And I'm not pretending for a second that this is a perfect solution. But I know it's better than the alternative. And in the ideal world, everyone would see the light and love and of life that God is. See the things, the beauty of it all that you and I both do. The passion of our Lord. But that is not the world that we live in. That is not here. That is utopia. That's in another place. And that's a place that you and I hope and pray every single day that we are lucky enough to ever be accepted into. Here on earth, I wish only to save as many innocent lives from abortion as possible. And in the process, share with others the truth about the love and sacredness that parenthood and the process of becoming a parent is. Something beautiful I've heard from not just my parents, but others that there's nothing as amazing or as precious as seeing the birth of your children. But this is not a partisan issue. This is a mankind issue, because these are our own people. These are our future. And since 1973, we have tragically ended 63 million children of our future. And it only branches out from there. And the children that they would have had if they were allowed to live the life that God had gifted them. And no matter how we felt about it, since 1973, we likely paid for it with our finances in one way or another. If we do not take action and do everything, and I mean everything, that we can to prevent future atrocities like this, then I fear that in the eyes of God, that we may not end up going guiltless, knowing that we could have done something, anything, to stop this. And that we'll be paying eventually a price much heavier than just with our finances. I don't want to look back in 49 years from now knowing that another 63 million children were aborted, murdered in the womb. And that I could have been the one to take a stand and do something, do my part to stop it. It's not perfect. I know it's not. But it's a lot better than the alternative. And I hope that you will join me in calling on your legislators, the people that we have trusted to uphold our values in our republic. Call on them and demand that after the hopeful overturning of Roe v. Wade, that the atrocity of abortion will not be allowed in our states. And that if abortions cannot or will not be outlawed for whatever reason that may be, then that our taxpayer dollars will no longer go to fund abortions, but instead go to funding something like contraceptives that will reduce the number of abortions significantly, if not, hopefully, ultimately. And I'm going to leave you with this final quote now. And I want you to remember this the next time someone tries to say that our founding documents do not discuss the right to life, and that they do not grant the authority to outlaw the destruction of life through abortion. Here's the quote. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Remember that, America. Unborn children are depending on you and I. As always, I thank you for listening, and I do truly appreciate you trusting me with your time. If you would like to contact me, contact the show, or support our show, you can do so at tusps.org. That is tusps.org. Thank you, everybody, for listening and supporting everything that we do. And until next time, always remember, it's we, the people,